The US and Venezuelan politics is not as it seems. Well, today we discuss.
Welcome to Venezuela Insider, the only place in Venezuela for expats, digital nomads, entrepreneurs, investors, travelers, and related internationals. For more information, venezuelainsider.com.
Of course, we have heard that in Venezuela, the politics, the government, it has kind of a feud with the United States, since, of course, Hugo Chavez arrived in power on 98, and the political situation has always been tense. First with Hugo Chavez, when Hugo Chavez was alive, he had a bunch of feuds. He always talked about the Bush administration and the Obama administration, and also Maduro, when Maduro arrived in power, had some issues with the Obama administration, big issues with the Trump administration. Of course, Trump is, of course, the most aggressive U.S. president in on recent history. But however, apparently, since still all of these particular issues, the average Venezuelan actually likes the United States. I'm not talking about politics, I'm talking about the country overall. And actually, we have a lot of Venezuelan migrants over the United States. According to some estimations that I mentioned here on this channel, could be around 700,000 Venezuelans living in the United States, and actually is one of the favorite destinations regarding not only Venezuelan migrants, but Venezuelan tourists that they want to travel abroad, and the United States is always one of the top options, the most favorite options for Venezuelan tourists. Also, I have to say that the commercial exchange between the US and Venezuela is not that bad. According to some information about the White House and that kind of stuff, Venezuela is, I believe, is right now the 12th biggest trading partner to the United States, mostly, of course, on crude oil. And yes, indeed, there is a significant trade between both countries. However, you always hear on the news that there is some sort of issue between the White House and the current Venezuelan administration, and that is completely true, by the way. However, the situation is not exactly as you can see on the news, especially on the political news. Okay, the status quo that you see on the news, and actually you can see it overall, is the United States usually favors the opposition leaders or here in the country, and always criticize the Venezuelan government, the Chavismo, especially Nicolás Maduro. Also, a lot of Venezuelan high-rank individuals on the Chavismo have been sanctioned by the United States. They are prohibited to visit the United States, their assets over there, and their bank accounts have been frozen and that kind of stuff. And of course, that they didn't like at all these big Venezuelan politicians. And even they have a bounty, according to the U.S. Justice Department, for some Venezuelan individuals accused of criminal activities, and that includes President Maduro himself. And right now, the situation is that there is a negotiation between the Venezuelan government, the Chavismo, and also the opposition people. That most of the opposition people, the opposition leaders are fake. Yeah, it is what it is. Well, not all, but most of them. So they are trying to negotiate having a fair election here in the country, and the end result is not as pleasant as the opposition wants. But usually the United States is involved on these particular negotiations, and actually they signed an agreement last year that is called the Barbados Accord. But apparently those particular accords have not been fully respected. However, I have to say that also the US government has agreements directly with the people, the big people in the government, the Chavismo and that kind of stuff, they have doing some negotiations in Qatar, I believe, and there were exchanges, first economical exchanges, and also some prisoner swap. Venezuela got some of their people that were arrested in the United States, and also some U.S. citizens that were arrested here in the country. They were also sent back to the United States. So these particular agreements happened. However, the big elephant in the room is the sanctions. And of course, those sanctions, there are sanctions both against Venezuelan individuals, that's one thing, but also sanctions against Venezuelan industries, mostly oil and natural resources. These particular sanctions started on 2019 during the Trump administration, and that was an attempt in order to basically hinder the ability of the Venezuelan government in order to maneuver, politically and economically. However, that is not affecting the Venezuelan government regarding their political presence, on a lesser degree, their economical, of course, operations, that kind of stuff, but they affect mostly the Venezuelan individual. And it's not because let's say these particular sanctions are poised to make a regime change here in the country, and that is not going to help because the sanctions of the United States never helps the government that they want to remove from power. It never works like that. Usually they get more tied to the power, and they end up affecting the average citizen in such country, in this particular case Venezuela. So since 2022 there have been some particular license and easing of sanctions to the Venezuelan economy, where there are further investing from American companies and European countries and European companies abroad and that kind of stuff. Also, I have to mention that the sanctions not only affect American companies in order to do business in Venezuela, but companies from all over the world. Thanks to this particular waiver of sanctions, some of oil multinationals, have been able to either invest on the country or expand further their investing here in the country. The biggest case, of course, is with Chevron. Chevron is this juggernaut U.S. oil multinational that it has a very important presence here in the country. However, they were not able to further develop and expand this particular presence. However, thanks to this particular license, this waiver of sanctions, are able to do so in the country, so more exploration, development, and right now drilling of new wells here on Venezuelan soil. Now, these particular sanctions, this easing of sanctions, is ending on April 18. However, the biggest issue is that going to happen? Well, we are seeing right now, at the moment that I'm recording this video, there are no news about it, but apparently what will end up happening is that the worst case scenario is that the sanctions, of course, are going to be kept in place. However, the U.S. government will still grant some waivers of the sanctions to some important companies. The first one is Chevron, an American company. They will keep their investing here in the country. Also, a handful of European multinationals are going to have a waiver in order to keep their operations here in the country. And some other multinationals, most likely American multinationals, will be able to receive these particular waivers of the sanctions in order to keep investing or start investing in the country at the first place. Now, what will happen if sanctions increase or become draconian as when they started on 2019 during the Trump administration? And why I think even on a hypothetical Trump administration, the status quo, it won't change that much. Well, the first thing is that if the sanctions are put in place de facto yet again, they will hinder the Venezuelan economy. And what happens when the Venezuelan economy depresses a little bit, the average Venezuelan already has it in their mind to migrate to another country. And thanks to recent history, the Venezuelan people know that places like Peru or Colombia or Brazil, that kind of stuff, they won't give you a better standard of living compared to Venezuela because already Latin American third world countries, it is what it is. So they will migrate straight to the United States. So the migration to the United States of Venezuelans will keep increasing if the sanctions are put in place. And the other thing is the gas prices. Venezuela is not as an important oil producer. It produces around 800,000 barrels of crude oil per day. But still, this particular quota of Venezuela can also is poised to increase on the next 5 years. Also, is more supply to the worldwide crude oil market, and hence, if Venezuela suffers more economic issues and they reduce this particular quota, you have to add up the issues in Ukraine, the war with Russia, and that kind of stuff, and also the issues in the Middle East with Israel and their neighbors, and also the issues in Yemen with the Houthis and the supply chain, that kind of stuff, that can create the perfect storm in order to further increase oil prices in the world and increase the gasoline prices in the United States. So thanks to both of those issues regarding if you have a Democrat or a Republican White House, the sanctions against Venezuela should not increase, should not be in place on a draconian matter in the future, thanks first the stability of the crude oil prices and the gas prices. That's one thing. And the second thing is migration. If the United States deliberately hinders the Venezuelan economy, what that one will create is further migration from Venezuela. And Venezuelans, believe me, are not going to migrate to neither Colombia or Chile or Peru or that kind of stuff. They know that a decent place in order to migrate, according to them, not my words, is the United States. So they're going to go right back to the southern border and start crossing the border, the US border yet again. And doesn't matter if you build the popular wall and that kind of stuff. And believe me, Venezuela is not going to pay for that wall either. The Venezuelans are going to keep crossing Rio Grande and arriving to the United States. So that's why, and even also I have to mention, is there are some negotiations on the background that we don't know, the general public, with the US government and the Venezuelan government. So the relationship between the US and Venezuela is actually better than most people think. And I hope some way or another is going to improve on the near future.
Thank you for watching Venezuela Insider. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media. If you want to work with us, VenezuelaInsider.com. Thanks again and have a nice day.